Hi, my name's Adam Storr. Thanks, Dan and Matt, for having me. Dan's been bugging me to do a little talk about this ever since we had a virtual pub session in the summer, and I went off praising about it. So here it is. So my name's Adam Storr, as I said. I'm a .NET developer, specialising in .NET Core and ASP.NET Core and all the fun stuff. I blog at my website there, adamstorr.co.uk, and you can contact me on Twitter at WestDiscGolf. So today I'm going to have a very brief overview of what is Autofixture and how it can help you. So intro to the basics. So a brief history. What is Autofixture? It's a library that was originally written by Mark Seaman. It's a name in the .NET space that's been around for a very long time that I'm sure you've probably come across at some point. He specialises in a lot more functional stuff nowadays, but this is kind of his baby back in the day. It was first announced in March 2009. It RTM'd the first version in January 2010, and as of this month, they're currently on version 14. Now, is it popular? Well, for me, downloading almost 26.5 million NuGet downloads since earlier today seems relatively popular to me. So it's obviously well used. I don't think my build server's downloading all of them. It's not me. So what is Autofixture? Well, from the main Autofixture website, it clarifies it quite well, really. So Autofixture is a tool designed to make test-driven development more productive and unit tests more refactoring safe. It does so by removing the need for hard-coding anonymous variables as part of a test's arrange phase. Well, in that small couple of sentences, there is a lot of things. So let's pull this apart slightly. So the tool is there to help testing. It says test-driven development, but I use it in all sorts of unit testing and integration test placements. So it's not exclusive to test-driven development. It's also there for refactoring safe, and you'll see more examples of that a bit later. You can change stuff in your code, and it won't make you have to go and change certain tests later because of things that are broken. It also removes the need for hard coding anonymous variables. Now, our anonymous variables are a thing that is essentially it's trying to solve. And also as part of the arrange phase. Now, a lot of people write unit tests in different ways. I'm a big advocate of the AAA syntax, the arrange, act, assert, and this is how that works. It helps solve or reduce the arrange phase, and I'll show you more examples. So what is anonymous data? Well, anonymous data is something that you will write in a test, but you don't actually necessarily care what the value is in a test. You need a string value, and you do string something equals, and you want a value that's a valid string. You don't actually necessarily care what it is. And why does this help? Well, it helps because if you're doing TDD and you're being very strict about it, if you have a string data value of Adam, then if you're returning true if the string that you pass into a method is equals to Adam, then you just return true. Happy days. And it's that level that we need to get past. So where does it all start? The core part of Autofixture is everything starts with a fixture. The fixture is the entry point to the world. It is where all the things get generated from. It's where you apply all the extension points to. It's where everything starts really. So let's work through an example. So this is what I was talking about, referring to as hard-coded data. You've got a test. You set your test up. You go, right, I need some test data. First name Adam, last name Storr. It shouldn't really matter, but you're wanting to. So you're wanting to create something to be able to execute your test against, and that's not necessarily ideal. So this is where the concept of anonymous data comes in. You start off by creating an Autofixture fixture, and then you ask it to create a random string. So you say, well, I want just create me a string. I don't care what the value is per se. I just want it to be unique in this instance. And what it actually does for strings under the hood is go, well, okay, we'll generate a GUID. The GUID will be unique, and it generates a new one every time, and toStrings it, and that's what you get. So it allows you to have anonymous data. It's not anonymous as the fact it's just the characters of a GUID. It's anonymous because it doesn't matter. You're not testing the string values specifically. You can also, with an extension package, allow you to prefix things. So, for example, if you wanted the first name, well, if you start debugging and it just says this GUID doesn't equal this GUID, then it's quite hard to see what you're trying to achieve. But what you can add is a seed value or a prefix value to the string. So the string value actually starts off with the word prefix. And as you can see in this example, I've debugged through a test, and the first name has a prefix and then a GUID value, whereas the last name is still just a random GUID. And that allows a lot easier to see in error messages when your test fails, to be able to see what's going on. But what about POCOS, I hear you shout? Well, it does this as well. So instead of just base types, you can also say, well, just spin me up a whole object model. And these can be relatively quite complex. And the usage of these are very, very useful when it comes along to things like if you're interacting with an API and it's got a complex object model and you need to submit it as a test, or you're getting it back, or you're testing that a specific thing is mapped, then you don't have to manually create up a new equals blah, 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 blah. And what you get as part of that is it's very similar to the seeding function, is that the properties on the object get a prefix of the name of the property. So it's easier to see what you're actually working with. So in this instance, the employee number is prefixed with employee number and then the string, because it's a string property. The same for the name, same for the last name. And it aids with, like I said, it aids with when tests, if the tests fail and it said first name, last name, then you know and it's supposed to say last name, first name, then you know it just needs to be swapped around. It has this concept of freezing, where you can say I always want, every time you ask for this type of thing, I always want it to be the same through the current instance of the fixture. So in this instance, I'm saying, right, I want a string that seeds with the word with name as a property, and every time I ask for a string, give me the same one back. Now, sometimes that's not particularly useful if you're just wanting string values, but it comes in a lot. It becomes a lot more powerful when you're building up system under tests, dependencies that get injected into it, and things like that. And I'll show you an example in a second. So those are like the basic fundamental building blocks of how you work with it. Now, it also has a really wide range of extension points. So it has, if you see the package reference at the bottom, it supports XUnit and various other testing frameworks. But for XUnit, it builds on the concept of using the theory and data attributes to say, give me data. And under the hood, AutoData spins up a fixture and tries to fill in the gaps of the signature of the method that you've specified. So in this instance, this is doing exactly the same as the example earlier. I want a first name, I want a last name, I don't care what the string is, please can I have some? And that's what that instance is doing. So this is a bit more of a more complex scenario, but it will make sense as I'll talk you through it. So we're spinning up a fixture, as we would at the beginning, everything, happy days. And what we're doing is saying, I want to customize this fixture with an auto mock customization. So this is allowing Autofixture and MockQ, the mocking framework, to kind of merge together and work together to give you the things that you want. You're then saying, okay, well, create me an employee POCO instance so I can use that. Great. And then we're coming along this concept of freezing. And as you said earlier, it says, freeze whatever it is that you've specified so I can use it later. And what we're doing here is saying I want to freeze a mock, and this is why that customization is important, because otherwise it would go, I don't know what an interface is, and it would start complaining. But this is where you're saying I want to set up a mock of that employee service, and that is injected into the my employee service, as we'll see lower down, that's creating the system under test. And like any unit test that use a mocking framework, we want to set up the expectations. We want to say when a get is called, any integer, don't care, return me the known instance that I've asked for earlier. And then we create the system as a test, execute the act, and assert. So as you can see, the arrange phase can get quite complicated. And I'm sure people have seen tests that are along these lines numerous of times. But we can make this easier and we can make this cleaner And this is what it was referring to at the beginning by saying it can tidy up the arrange phase. And we can do this by using one of the extension points. So we can derive we derive a new attribute from the AutoData attribute. And again, as we've seen before, we're passing in the new fixture, which we've seen previously. We're customizing it with the new customization, which we'd previously seen on the line on a slide earlier. And now we can get to use that, and the power of AutoMock with XUnits combined gives us a lot of flexibility. So working with this, we've seen in the attribute, we now don't need our fixture, so we can get rid of that. Now, if we haven't got our fixture, we get rid of the employee, we get rid of the service, and we actually get rid of the system under test creation. Now, if we just look at those 3 lines, the test itself is actually quite clear what we're trying to achieve at this point. And as you can see from the body of this method, we've now achieved what it's trying to do. But we've also had to update it with regards to how it's working. So in XUnit, we've updated it to a theory attribute, which now uses our AutoMock data attribute we've just created. But that's kind of gluing the magic together with the theory attribute and XUnit's ability to inject data into a test. So now we've got our employee that we had before, our frozen mock service. So instead of obviously using the method to freeze the service, we've now got an attribute that you decorate the parameter, the method parameter on to say, this is the service that is frozen. So like the method before, this is now saying for this service, this is for wherever you ask for an iEmployee query service, inject this mock into it. So which is why it can be accessed inside the system under test, and in this example, the myEmployee service. And obviously, finally, we've asked it to spin up the service itself. Now, we didn't need to necessarily do this at this point. We could have said in the arrange phase, the sut equals new inject service.object, but it's doing it for us. And as part of this, it is the tidying up of the arrange phase. It's also being there to allow for the refactoring and safety. So if you've got if you've got an employee object that you said new employee, set all the properties, and you go through and say, okay, well, I want another property on it, and that breaks validation for some reason, then half your tests might break because it's expecting it to be there, but it's not the tests that care what the values are. Whereas if you just add it in and these come in, you don't have to go back and refactor all those other tests to add the additional property in that those tests don't really care about. So that aids from that perspective. So what are the other extension points? So they're mainly around what they call specimen builders and customizations. And there are various other bits that you can plug in at various points as well. Now, I'm not an expert at this point, and this is a brief overview, so I won't go into too much details. But there is the link on the screen is to an example I worked through a couple of months back, where I required a property that was a string, but it had to define by a certain format, and allowing to write a custom specimen builder allowed for those formats to be explicit when needed, whereas other random strings could still stick by the original default standard. So as we start to wrap up, there's the few helpful links. The Autofixture link to their website where the documentation is. Now it is a little bit lacking. I think they're working on it. So if you're inclined to write some documentation, then I'm sure they'll probably be inclined to help with pull requests and things to their documentation. But the quick start guide is pretty good and runs through very similar to what I've talked about tonight. If you have access to Pluralsight, I highly recommend the unit testing with Autofixture course by Jason Roberts. It goes into a lot more detail about all the basics and how to work with different types, and I recommend it. So with that, I'd just like to say thank you for having me. If you want to get in contact then about this, then drop me a message on Twitter. My DMs are open. If you want to find out what disc golf is, then also get in contact. Thanks very much.